The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod, and we're coming to you live from the Warner Center in Woodland Hills, California. This is the home for Autism Live. It is also the home for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. I'm super excited about today's show because we've got a really incredible guest that I can't wait to introduce you guys to. But first, we want to let you know that we're here for the next hour live, and we want to hear from you. We want to talk with you. We want you to participate with us. So 𝗃𝗏 has already started showing you some of the different ways that you can connect with us. While he shows you the myriads of ways that you can watch the show and have your comment read on the show or answered, I want to remind you that our homepage is autism-live.com, and when you go there, there's lots of things to do. But let me just point out a couple of quick things. There's a whole library of videos, and you can search them in lots of different ways because some people like to search by topic, some people like to search by a person. So there's lots of different ways that it's separated for you, or you can just go to the search bar and type in keywords, and it should direct you to where you want to go. If you want to go to the Ask Dr. Doreen clips and search topics there, at the top of the page, there's a search by topic, and it's a drop-down menu, and if you click the one for Ask Dr. Doreen, there's one coming for the Temple Grandin videos, but you can go in and you can push toilet training, for instance, and then it will show you all of the times that Dr. 𝗃𝗄𝗅 has answered questions about toilet training, and they'll show you exactly what the question was, right? Because if you're trying to toilet train a 3-year-old, that's a vastly different proposition than a 16-year-old who is throwing their poo, right? But both of those questions are going to be in there. So feel free to look at those as well. And by the way, there's a chat button at the bottom of the page. It's a little red button. If you click it, chat, and it opens up a box, and you can type and hit enter, and that shows up on my screen, and you and I can have a conversation. But better than that, you can have a conversation with our guests. Our guest today is somebody that I think you're going to want to talk to. So that's all free. It's all anonymous. You can also be writing it on Facebook and YouTube and Periscope, and I'm forgetting something, Twitter. And you can write me at s.penrod@autism-live.com, whatever way works best for you. And hey, if none of those ways are really your particular MO of how you want to comment, please write and let us know. We're trying to be on more screens. You guys wrote to us and said, we want, why aren't you on iHeartRadio? And we were like, well, I don't know. Why aren't we on iHeartRadio? And now we are. So there we go. And by the way, when you watch us on iTunes, you can listen to us too. You have a choice when you download if you want to do the audio or do the full picture. You can, because you can take us in the car, you can take us on a walk. We try to be a friendly show, and when we put things on the screen, let you know as much as we can what the things are on the screen. Obviously, we can't do that with everything, but we try. So anyway, thrilled to be here this morning. You know, on Thursdays, I like to remind you that we have lots of experts that are on the show. I'm not one of them. Let's be abundantly clear. I'm not an expert in autism. I'm not even an expert in my very own kid. But I do have a kiddo who was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2.5, and he is fantabulous. He's the most amazing person on the face of the planet. I will tell you that when he was diagnosed with autism, we were told it's a lifelong disability was the word that was said to me. And I think that for some people that may be very true. Because my son got really good services, I still, you know, my son's brain works differently than my brain. His brain works better. Let's be 100% clear, right? But I look at my son and there's no way that I can see a disability anymore. I don't. There certainly was a time when I saw that there were things that he wanted to do that he could not do, and things that he was frustrated with. Why isn't this working out for me? Because he didn't know that there was something that he wasn't able to do, right? He totally was missing the cue for it. And through good therapy, I will say, through the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, he doesn't have any of that anymore. He knows, if he doesn't know how to do something, he knows how to go look it up and find it and practice it to get better at it. Like, you know, like you do, right? He doesn't have a disability. There's no way you could convince me of that. But it was a lot of work. Let's be honest, it was a lot of work. We got a lot of help and support. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders, I always say they saved our lives. They saved his life, because before them, all he wanted to do was run out into traffic. And now all he wants to do is build things on his, and print things on his 3D printer, and design things on his 3D printer, and write scripts and shoot movies and be with his friends, and a lot, right? So there we have it. Okay. But in any case, I'm not an expert. I'm a mom, and I want to help you to get to the resources that you want to get to, because we got lucky, and I want you to get lucky in whatever way that looks like for you. So write to me, tell me what you're looking for, and I'll do my best. You know, I can only do my best. I can't promise you that that I can. I certainly don't know everything, but I look for people who do know everything whenever we can find them. All right? Sound like a good deal? You know what I always say here? We can do this together, right? We hold hands. 𝗃𝗵𝗲𝗃𝗲𝗍, right? Okay. So Thursdays, we like to start off with something we fondly refer to as the jargon of the day. This is when we take on one word, one phrase, one acronym. We try to figure out what in the hey nani are those experts talking about. I'm very much in a RuPaul mood. You'll understand why later. Okay, so we give you the actual definition of the term. Sometimes I like to make fun of it when appropriate, which is most of the time. And then we give you a working definition, which is meant to help you to sort of find your entree into understanding. Don't, you know, get all upset if you don't get it the first time. I don't think any of us get it the first time, but that's why we cycle back through some of these terms. One of our staff said to me today, "Are you sure you want to do FAPE? You just did it last July." And I was like, oh yeah. If it's been since last July, we need to do it again. So there it is. There's our term for the day, FAPE, F-A-P-E, FAPE. What is it? Let's take a look at our actual definition. FAPE stands for Free Appropriate Public Education. It's a term frequently referred to in IEPs. It's the thing you're entitled to. So let's take a look at what, and there's not much to be made fun of there, right? Because this is serious business, and we just stepped into IEP season. And it's a little bit like sometimes stepping into something that's not good on your shoe, right? But it doesn't have to be that way if we understand what the rules are. So let's take a look at what our working definition for FAPE is. It's what your child is legally entitled to in the United States. So again, it's free, appropriate public education. So IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, says that every single person, every single child in the United States is entitled to a free, appropriate public education. Okay, so when you go in with your child, if they could be a child who has cerebral palsy, they could be a child who's blind, they could be a child who has a hearing loss, it could be a child with autism, right? And they are coming in, and we've identified them as someone who has a designated, what they call disability, right? Sometimes I even struggle with that, right? But that's what they call it. They come in and they're identified as being eligible for special education. And when you are eligible for special education, it means that you have the right to be assessed for an IEP. More and more we're hearing from people who say, oh, they said that we don't need an IEP. We'll have Bonnie on Monday talking about this kind of thing. More often than not, you do qualify for an IEP. You just have to demonstrate that the child needs some educational support. Now, if the person has whip smart, IQ and they're getting straight A's across the board and they have no problem turning in their work, sometimes it makes for a difficult case to say this child needs an education plan. But the truth is that child may very well need an education plan, because if they are not good, if they have an autism diagnosis and their problem is being able to talk to peers and collaborate with peers and have it go successfully, then they still need educational support. And a lot of times school will argue, oh, that's a 504. Well, you know, if you feel like that's okay, fine. But otherwise, let's fight for the IEP, because the IEP provides services. 504 provides accommodations. And really the IEP provides both, right? But here's the problem. You get into the meeting and at some point the school is going to offer you their version of FAPE. They have to. That's what an IEP is. They offer you, here's what we think FAPE is for your child, because it has to be a free, appropriate public education. Notice that appropriate is really the word here, because we all understand what free means, right? Public means you're not going to pay for it. And education, all right, look, that could be a little dicey too, but it's the appropriate that is where we're really going to argue. And this is hard for autism parents because, look, you know, we all want what's best for our child. Of course. Like, that's not even a question, right? You want what's best for your child. But when you go into an IEP, if you start arguing best, they know that you're not up on what's happening here. Because you don't get to say, my child deserves what's best, and so you're going to give it to us, because the law doesn't support that. The law says they need to give your child what's appropriate. So that's going to be the word that we're going to argue over how we define that. Now, the first IEP that I had to go to as a parent of an individual on the spectrum, I went dictionary shopping until I found the one that defined appropriate as being effective. And I went in with that blown up on a card and said appropriate, and it, you know, had the whole thing so it looked like it was fresh from the dictionary, and I had the quote, you know, so they could see where I got it. And I said, you know, appropriate equals effective. So show me what you're going to do that's going to be effective for teaching my child. And that's where we were off to the races, right? And then they sued me. That's a whole other Oprah we're not going to get into today. But they did. They filed due process against us. That was only the first time they did that. They did that twice. I'm the only person I know that a school district, same school district, has filed due process against our family, not once, twice. But you know what? In the end, we worked it all out. We never actually went to court. I'm not allowed to talk about things, but it all worked out, right? So my point here is, it's what you're entitled to. It doesn't mean they're just going to hand it over to you. Sometimes you got to fight tooth and nail for it, right? And you got to show them that you mean business and that you know what you're talking about. So that's why we have Bonnie Yates here on Mondays to answer your questions and to help you to figure out what to do and where to go next when it's special education law. But there are laws, and our kids have a right. In fact, the Supreme Court 2 years ago, very important landmark case that said that appropriate could not be just de minimis, which is Latin for the minimum. So there have been a lot of schools who have said, well, you know, the kid is here. We have a desk for them. We put worksheets in front of them. We really can't be expected to teach someone who's difficult to teach. That's really been the attitude at some schools. And the Supreme Court said, that's not appropriate. De minimis is not appropriate. And I don't know if they looked at their dictionary and saw that it means effective, right? But we need to fight for FAPE, and we need to define what that appropriate is and help the school to define what the appropriate is for our kids, because it's an entire year of your child's life. And I have seen when my son has gone to school in a year when we were all, when the IEP was right and the FAPE was right and he made progress, right? And there have been years when we didn't get it right, and it was not just straight across. and your kid's self-esteem can be damaged. So it's important that we get this right. And you have the right, your child has the right to FAPE. Don't forget it, free, appropriate public education. And one little trick that a lot of us use in an IEP is that we go in and we just say appropriate 38 times. And they'll say, well, you know, we want for Johnny to do X, Y, and Z. And we go, oh, and how did you determine that that was what was appropriate? And they go, right? They have to start rifling through their papers to have that line up with an assessment that they may or may not have done. Why is it appropriate? You're saying it's appropriate. What are you basing that on, right? Use the word all the time, appropriate, with the school, and they go, oh, okay. This is a parent who knows which way up. The minute you say, well, I want what's best for him, they know they got you, right? Okay, moving on. We always have a question of the day, and our question today for you, which goes hand in hand with our phrase for the day. What changes would you like to see for educating individuals with ASD? You know, a little over a week ago, I came in, we had all the position papers from all of the candidates who had at that point, I don't know if Bloomberg has turned in one yet. He hadn't 2 weeks ago. But I went through all of the other position papers on disabilities for all of the other Democratic candidates that are still sort of in it. And Yang was still in it at that point. And first we compared, you know, like volume, and then we compared a couple of different things. One of the things that I look for all the time, that since IDA was instituted, and we said this is going to be the law of the land and this is what we're going to judge things by, it has never been fully funded. Nobody has ever fully funded it. Can you imagine? That's, you know, it's like saying, well, we're going to build a house and we gave up our other house and we're now living in this house, but we didn't budget a roof. So we're not going to have one, but we're going to live in the house and we're going to slug it out and hope that everybody can find a dry corner when it's raining, right? Not a good plan. So I looked to see what everybody's plan was for fully funding IDA, but what they also were talking about doing for employment and education and all these other things for disabilities. But here's one of the big questions, right? What changes would you like to see in the education system in educating individuals with ASD? And then I would encourage you to look at the candidates and see, is there a candidate who believes what you believe for education? There's some very interesting things in those documents. Senator Warren has the longest section on education because she's a former teacher, but everybody has something in theirs, right? So check that. They're all online. You can check them out. Some are longer than others, and some of them are more interesting than others. Okay, but what would you like to see? I think that it's important that we, in order, you know what Dr. Phil says, in order to claim it, you got to name it, right? What do you want in the education system? I want to see things and money put in place to teach teachers and staff how to do inclusion well, because we all know that good inclusion is the ticket, right? But very few people know how to do good inclusion. And I will say that there are things in Senator Sanders' plan that address inclusion. There are things in pretty much everybody's that address inclusion. The only person who's incredibly specific about it in their plan is Mayor Buttigieg. He gets very specific about what goals he wants to get to by 2025. Everybody else is a little bit less specific, although Senator Sanders says the measures that he will take immediately by executive action, whereas in Buttigieg's, he does not say how he's going to get there. He just says, this is where I want to get to. Interesting, right? Okay, so check that out, but write into us and tell us what you want to see. All right, moving on. We always have a topic of the week, and I think this topic is so important. It's repairing a conversation. So often when any of us are having a conversation and we're talking, somehow we get off. Like maybe something was misunderstood, maybe the conversation got interrupted and then jumped back in and somebody didn't get to finish a thought. That happened to me the other day with sort of disastrous results. And I had to go back and repair the conversation. And it was like horrible because a misunderstanding had arisen simply because I was saying a thought, didn't get to the end of the thought, and somebody else came in the room. And then when we started, I had, you ever that feeling you're like, something didn't go right. And then I realized later, I was like, I know what it is. I didn't get to finish that thought, and I'm not happy with how that ended. And went back and talked to the person. Man, am I glad I repaired the conversation, because they had taken it the complete opposite of how I meant it, because I didn't get the end of the sentence in, you see? It's important for all of us to know how to repair a conversation. I love that in skills, they have specific lessons in the social language curriculum. I can't talk today. In the social language curriculum, it's kind of a mouthful, about conversation, starting a conversation, maintaining a conversation, repairing a conversation, and ending a conversation. And they're kind of brilliant. And for those of you who are watching that have trouble with this kind of thing, whether you're on the spectrum or you're not on the spectrum, I would tell you, I learned so much just by reading through those lessons and going, oh, here's the part that I never thought of before. Here's the part that I was missing. And you go, oh, and then you can go try it out, and it actually gets better. Because repairing a conversation is a pretty important skill to have. All right. So we've got a great show for you today. I'm very excited because if you are not watching the new hit show, Everything Is Going to Be Okay, you're missing it. This is on Freeform, so you're going to have to go to your TV guide to see what channel that is on your cable channel or on your satellite dish. But I had never been on this channel before, and now I'm going to check out the other things on the channel, but this show is what got me to that channel. This is an important show, and I'm going to say that, it's possible that maybe it's very cutting edge, and it might be too cutting edge for some people, although I would be bummed for you if it was too cutting edge for you, because it's hilarious, it's thoughtful, it's thought-provoking, it's so well written, tender, and features a cast of characters. One person who is very, more than one person, several people on the show are very specifically identified as being on the autism spectrum. And some of those actors, I believe actually maybe all of them, we'll check, are actually on the autism spectrum. We have one of those actors here with us today. Lillian Carrier is going to be here, and she's brought a very special, I would say, friend. And you'll see when we come back, you're not going to want to miss this. I'm so excited. So stick with us. We're going to be back with Lillian after these messages.
Dr. Grandin, what is it like for you personally to have become the most celebrated person in the field of autism?
Well, I feel it's a responsibility. I get a lot of emails and letters from young kids. In fact, at the last conference I was at, I got a whole envelope of letters from kids in an English class. What makes me pleased is I think I'm inspiring a lot of kids to succeed, because I want to see kids succeed. Now, one problem I'm seeing with some of the fully verbal kids is they're not getting stretched enough. I see kids coming up to me at conferences where nobody's taught them how to shake hands. See, when I was a young child, I had to be party host at my mother's parties. Had to shake hands, say please and thank you, have table manners, learn how to shop. And I'm seeing too many situations where they aren't learning those basic skills.
Yeah, so you really think they need the basic skills that every child should learn?
Yes. Now, in the 50s, every child was taught social skills in a much more structured way. And today, that's not the case. Now, the so-called normal kids, they pick it up. But the autistic kids have got to be taught.
Okay.
And that's not being done enough.
What kind of preconceptions, though, do you think most people have about relating to those with ASD?
Autism is a really big spectrum. You're going all the way from Silicon Valley down to somebody with a lot of intellectual challenges. Now, the kinds of services and things a person needs is very different, those two ends of the spectrum. And I go to different places. I go to Silicon Valley, and I see a lot of people that I know are on the spectrum. And then I go see another kid that's smart at math, but nothing's being done to develop his skills, and he's getting addicted to video games. and they are the same kind of kid. The thing that I'm seeing, especially on the mild end of the spectrum, is too many kids sort of becoming the label. I'm very concerned about them getting a handicap mentality. Then I go over to the meatpacking plant, and there's a whole maintenance shop of old hippies that I know are on the spectrum, and they run that maintenance shop, and they've been there for years and years and years.
Why do you think the numbers, 1 in 68 now, have risen so dramatically?
I think on the mild end of the spectrum, it's increased detection. Because I can think of kids I went to elementary school with, kids I went to college with, that today would be diagnosed on the spectrum. I think that's a big part of it on the mild end of the spectrum. Now, I think there also is some severe autism that may have actually increased because there's more environmental contaminants and there's more medications being given during early pregnancy.
Dr. Grandin, you beg parents not to let their children with autism be defined by the DSM or the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. Why?
Well, I think the DSM made a big mistake removing Asperger's syndrome, because under the DMS-4, autism you had to have speech delay, Asperger was no speech delay. Now, you could argue scientific reasons for taking out the speech delay stuff, but from a service provider standpoint, you know, the kind of services that somebody's nonverbal has is different than a mild kid with Asperger's. And I'm seeing too many fully verbal kids, less severe than me, getting put into a class with nonverbal kids. I'm seeing too many smart kids not learning job skills. That's another thing that I really push. Because when I was 13, my mother had got me in a sewing job. When I was 15, I was cleaning horse stalls. It's really important that students intern in a job before they graduate from high school. They got to learn that discipline of getting to work.
If you could speak to every business owner in America, what would you say to convince them to hire somebody on the autism spectrum?
Well, there's certain things they can do extremely well. In fact, the 𝗃 Corporation is hiring people with autism. There's another Project Search, where there's work being done with collaborating with hospitals to train them to set up surgical instruments for different types of surgery. And they take longer to train, but once they're trained, they're super, super good and meticulous about making sure the instruments are set up right. And that's got about a 78% employment rate.
So you think the skills that those with ASD have to offer are often overlooked by people that employ?
As I said before, I can think of kids that I went to college with that definitely were on the autism spectrum. Those individuals are all employed in good jobs. And I think a lot of this gets back pounding those manners in the 50s and the 60s, and kids being on things like paper routes, where they learned work skills.
Why do you think the experts in the field of ASDs focus so intensely on the deficits and not on the strengths of autism?
Well, we need to be building up strengths. My ability in art was always encouraged. And I was encouraged to do lots of different kinds of art. If you got a third grader that's good at math and he can do a high school math book, let him do the high school math book. Don't hold them back.
I want to know why you think that so little attention has been paid to the sensory processing issues. What can we learn from those?
Well, I just heard about a brand new study that's been done up at the in California, Dr. Wu, and they took children aged 4 through 12 that had speech delay, and they stayed in their regular programs, ABA or whatever the speech therapy the school was doing, and then they got an hour a day of sensory therapy where they did a lot of variety of stimulation, like walk on different kinds of flooring, smell different smells, do different activities in a mirror, big variety, always doing more than one sensory thing at a time. And it was done as a controlled experiment, where half the kids just got the regular treatment and the other half got this added sensory treatment. And they got some really big, significant improvements. And they made the point of using all very inexpensive things that would be in any house.
There's so much division in the autism community. How do you think we can all come together and find a common ground?
I think that merging Asperger's together with autism has made all of this worse, because you have a segment of very, very severely handicapped kids where they're never going to be able to live independently. That's a very different kind of situation than a mild Asperger's type of kid. You see, you're putting too many apples and oranges together. Every other diagnosis, like dyslexia, learning problems, ADHD, you've got a fully verbal kid. Only in autism, right now, are you getting a range going from, smart computer geek down to somebody that has very, very severe challenges. Now, I think the American Psychiatric Association originally figured the Asperger kids would get into this social communication category. That's not what's happening. Nobody's going into that because there's no funding for it.
as the most admired person in this field, and we are literally becoming an autism nation, what do you think the most important thing is for us to be aware of?
Well, there's a point where personality variants are just normal variation. I think a brain can be made more cognitive and thinking, or a brain can be made more social. Now, at what point does that become abnormal? There's no black and white dividing line. I'm getting concerned that what we're saying is abnormal is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Obviously, a child that has severe speech delay, that's an abnormality. But when you take the kids that are just kind of socially awkward, a lot of those kids are really smart. And then you got the person that's a total social butterfly. And let's think back to the caveman days. I don't think the social yak-yaks around the campfire made the first stone spear.
Dr. Grandin, thank you for inspiring all of us as parents and children.
Welcome back. We're so excited, and there's been lots of hubbub in the break because we have welcomed to the studio a wonderful young actress and entrepreneur, I guess, Lillian Carrier, and she is here with her wonderful service dog. This is Luke that she's here with. And so we did a little different configuration in our studio to try to make it comfortable for Luke. Of course, it's a very weird space for a dog, and Luke is a big dog.
He's a very big dog, yes.
So at some point he may want to, get on the floor. We'll see. But it was great fun to watch you guys come in here and you talk to him and get him up on the couch, and super duper fun. Of course, you know what they say about children and dogs? It's like everybody focuses on the dog, right? So, but I'm here to talk to you, but sometimes to talk about Luke. So Luke is just so enticing. He's just absolutely beautiful. But Lillian is a wonderful actress. If you are not watching Everything's Gonna Be Okay. Now, I always mess up the title of it, but it's Everything's Gonna Be Okay.
Yes.
Because sometimes I say Everyone's Gonna Be Okay, or, I don't know, I just mess it up, but it's Everything's Gonna Be Okay. Wonderful new hit show that's on Freeform. Freeform is a cable channel that it used to be Disney Family, then it changed to Freeform Disney, now it's just Freeform, and their like buzz thing is that it's just slightly leaning forward or something like that. It's shows with an edge. I think it's a little bit cutting edge, and this show is cutting edge. And so Lillian plays the character 𝗔𝗕𝗢𝗚 on the show, who's a good friend of Matilda's. But you also have another role on the show. Tell us what else you do besides playing 𝗔𝗕𝗢𝗚.
I was brought on as a consultant on the show.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what exactly do you consult about?
Autism, specifically, yes, and service dogs.
Wonderful. So tell us a little bit about you as an actress, and then we'll talk about when you auditioned for the show. When did you start acting?
So, I've always done youth theater, but this was, my first real, professional acting anything.
Well,
yeah.
It's a pretty big first, I gotta say.
Yeah, it was a huge first. I went in thinking, there was nothing. I was just I'm gonna audition, it's gonna be fine. Just a fun thing to do. And then
did you already have an agent, or did you go in without an agent?
No, I was not pursuing acting as a career. I just thought, I saw that they were auditioning autistic people for the role, and it was more I want to meet these people. I want to find out what they're doing.
Yeah.
And so I went in for the audition for that purpose and to have fun with it, right? I was I did youth theater. This could be a thing, and it led.
It was very brave and bold. I'm sure a lot of people looked at, first of all, where did you see it posted, or how did you find out about it, that they were looking for individuals on the spectrum?
My job coach, who was helping me figuring out what I wanted to do with my life, just came across it because she works with a lot of autism people, and they reach out with any opportunities, and she said you should. She basically talked me into it because when she first presented it to me, I was absolutely against it. And then she was like, this is just go for the experience. You'll meet people, it's good executive functioning practice, and I think you'll just enjoy it.
I love that.
Yeah.
Are you glad that they talked you into it?
Oh, I'm so glad. Like, it's been such a wonderful experience. Everyone there was, like, so sweet and so nice.
Love it.
And I think this show has done a great job of presenting autism in such a nice way and to start conversations about, like, what all that stuff in that show means.
Yeah.
And
Crazy good. So you went to the audition, but you took Luke with you because he goes with you everywhere, right?
yeah. So, to clarify, the audition was actually for Matilda in the pilot when I first auditioned. And yeah, when I went in and I met Josh Thomas.
Who is brilliant.
So brilliant, so nice, and like I really feel like he nailed the voice of autism so well, and he truly understands us. Yeah, I went in and met him, and he saw Luke, and I absolutely fell in love with him. And then he was I saw him looking at him, and then he just looked at me and he was like, autistic people can have service dogs? And I'm like, yeah, it's the thing, obviously, I have. And I explained to him a little bit about what they do and what he does for me. And he thought that was really interesting. And he said, I could see Matilda having a service dog. And I was like, oh, that would be really cool. Like, we'd have to talk about how well he gets on with Luke. And he's like, no. Luke would be Matilda's service dog. And I was like, oh, well, we could try that out. He's never done that. Like, he's not trained for that.
Yeah.
And then when I didn't end up getting the part, he gave me a call and was like, I don't want you to freak out. Like, I know you're a little upset, but if this goes to series, I'm writing you a part in the show. And that's how 𝗔𝗕𝗢𝗜 came to be, and Duke as well.
And so he's called Duke on the show.
He's Duke on the show, yes. Because in the pilot, there was already established character named Luke.
Got it.
Who is Matilda's crush. So it would just be confusing to have two
I didn't think about
Lukes.
that. Of course, that makes total sense. But I mean, I love that story that you went for the audition, and of course brought your dog because that's what you do.
He goes everywhere with me.
And that you got cast and he got cast.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the best story ever, and a fun role too.
Such a fun role. Yeah, I was so excited, and like a lot of the autism side of it was based off of me as a person because it was written for me. So it was really cool to be able to just feel free and be able to let those things go and not have to, hide all of those things in this character, right?
I love it. I love it. And so there's lots of different times when we see the interactions with Matilda and her friends, and in particular with you, and you play a very pivotal role in terms of talking with her and being her confidant for a lot of different things. And there's some stuff, like, people need to be watching this. And if you've missed, because the show debuted in January, so you've missed several episodes, but it's a half-hour show. You can get caught up really quickly. I know I was behind 2 weeks and I wanted to watch before you came in, and I went and watched it on Hulu. You can do that. But it plays on Thursday nights at 8:30, if I'm not mistaken, on Freeform.
So the 7th episode will be on tonight.
That's right. And I love that all of the episodes are named after bugs and spiders because Josh Thomas's character is an entomologist on the show. And so there's that running theme through it, which I absolutely love. And I have theories about things, and I've had theories about things. But anyway, they're like the topics that you guys cover on that show. Woo! You don't kid around.
They're big ones, yeah.
Woo!
And they're very important ones that I feel like should be talked about more, that for some reason are taboo to touch. But he brings it out in such a comedic, fun way that also is heart-touching. And I feel like he makes those topics approachable, that you can watch that episode and then afterwards sit down with someone you love
and discuss
it.
And the stuff that there is nothing off the table. I mean, the first time that I saw it, and I, because I got to meet you, at AutFest, they debuted it for the autism community, just the first episode. And so they sent it to me ahead of time because I was going to be the moderator for the panel. And it gets sent to you from Disney, and I expected to see something very Disney, right? And I started watching, I was like, this is Disney? Disney got all hip and cool and edgy, like edgy. We're not kidding around edgy.
Yeah.
And I remember telling my husband about it then, and then he was watching an episode with me a couple of weeks ago, and he went, wait a second, this is Disney? I mean, and to the point where one of the questions that I had, because with Matilda, with her storyline, she, and I don't want to give anything away, you guys need to go watch it, but she says, I'm budding sexually and I want to have a sexual experience, and she goes about that in a way, and then we see some things that come to fruition, and I was like, what was it like being on, because the girl who's playing Matilda is also identifies herself as being on the spectrum, and I was like, I want to know how this was dealt with on the set and how you guys make everything comfortable. Your character had a kiss with somebody, yes? How, and you're the consultant. Like, what was that like on the set?
So there was a lot of prior stuff that I sat down with Josh Thomas and talked about sensory stuff, which was a big thing for me specifically. I'm hyposensitive to touch, so I had to explain exactly how I like to be touched, what would cause a sensory overload and all that stuff, which also helped him create those characters.
Yeah.
And that is put into my characters specifically, that we went down to costuming to make it more comfortable for me. That if you notice from day one, Drea wears a compression shirt, which was for me as a person. I talked about how with my hyposensitivity, compression is really helpful in keeping me grounded and calm, and we discussed whether we wanted to hide that from the audience or show it, and we decided like this is a show about people with autism. Let's show it. So under every single outfit she wears, she has a compression shirt on. And
I guess I didn't realize that's what it was.
Yeah.
I thought that was just her style, but I wasn't thinking about it, that that's what that is. Interesting.
And then, we definitely, anytime there was intimacy or touching between the characters, I would discuss it with both the director and the other actors. And there was lots of discussion beforehand, and the other actors were very comfortable with saying the same things of what their needs were and talking with me and the directors and each other.
Which honestly is how it should be with everyone.
Yeah, I think definitely the other actors would say things like, I'm uncomfortable if you touch me here. Just like, there was always, everyone has those needs. So to just being able to vocalize and share that. And then of course, anytime you got overwhelmed, 5-minute breaks were allowed. I definitely had a few times that I stepped out of the scene, because you see that scene, it's 3 seconds, but we, did it 5 to 6 times. That specific kiss or intimate moment, whatever it was.
Yes.
So.
Yes. We don't want to give too much away, but you should be watching it.
Yeah.
But I guess one of the things that I love about the show is that, normally when you're watching television and they sort of reveal something and you go, okay, well, that's going to have an arc of like 3 or 4 shows, and that's not the way Josh writes. It happens either in that moment or the next scene. There is no waiting until the next episode.
Yeah.
Stuff happens. He just like rockets through storylines, and you find yourself going, "Ooh!" and making noises. I literally make noises. I'm like, "Oh my goodness," and clutching the couch and doing things. It's exciting.
It's so exciting. It's so fast-paced, and I feel like it's one of those shows that you can watch 6 times and get something new out of it every time, and different laugh points where you're laughing at something new each time that you didn't notice before. So many characters, so many things, and especially rewatching, you'll see characters pop up that had big moments later you didn't notice before.
Yes. I could see that.
Yeah, because you'll see characters that have big episodes later in the season that have been there from the beginning.
Yeah. It's so fascinating, and I got to be honest, because Josh is for you guys who don't know, we got to have him come on the show. He said he would. He's hilarious. He's an Australian comic, and he's done other shows, but I think this is his first big American show.
Yeah.
And he's writing it, and he's starring in it, and he's very involved in every aspect of it, and he is hilariously irreverent. Like, he says the things that people go, he didn't just say that, did he? And I guess he's like, because I got to spend time with you guys that day, and he seems to be that way in real life too. He's got a very interesting take on the world, and I just appreciate that he could have done a show about anything, but he decided the premise of the show, you guys, is that it's this half-brother from Australia who comes to visit, and he's got these two stepsisters, and he ends up, teenage stepsisters, he ends up having to really be their caregiver, and one of them is on the spectrum. That about encapsulates it, right? But hilarious and poignant. There's that old thing about I laughed, I cried. You really do. Every episode you laugh and you cry. Every single episode. And every single episode, there's something that takes my breath away. Just takes my breath away. See, I get emotional. But it's real. I talked about it when I came back after I saw it with the @Fest, and I said, oh, you guys, you're not going to believe this. You're not going to. Okay, so you were there, you're there as the consultant, and at what point, so he called you and said, I've written you a role. What point did he say to you, and I want you to be the on-set consultant?
So it was kind of gradual, that it started off that he found out how much knowledge I had, and that, what I did was, for a living, is help people with
Let's
understand
talk about that.
autism.
What do you do besides being a professional actress on a hit show?
Me and my mother and my sister founded a nonprofit called Autism. We developed this because it's geared toward adults transitioning from high school to whatever is their next step, or adults in their adult life who just need that little extra push or little extra help. Because reaching that age of 18 and graduating high school, and I tried every program out there. I tried mainstreaming in college. I tried college with help. I tried just going into supportive living services where I was in full-on housing, being taken care of, and then people came to my house to take care of me, and it seemed to be either geared toward you can do it on your own or you need 100% support. And there didn't seem to be that middle ground of like, I'm pretty capable, but I need a little extra help.
Yeah.
So we just were like, it's not out there, we can't find it, let's make it.
Awesome.
And that's kind of how it came to be. And then it's kind of grown in different directions as our clients have asked for things. And right now our main focus is social programming, that there is so much out there socially that people don't know how to find what is the right niche and is socially comfortable for autism. So we have been looking at places and activities that are sensory friendly, that are easy to navigate, and creating social programming where it's 100% people on the spectrum, plus a few people bring, a friend that they feel comfortable with. So there is, no sense of like, I did something wrong, no one understands me, and they can have some sort of social life. We get people in their 20s, in their 50s, in their 80s, all seeking this out as something they've, not had enough of.
That's got to be very rewarding to see that you've created something that needed to be created. You filled a hole. Now, where do you do this? Where is this located?
This is currently located in Redondo Beach. We are now starting and planning some online stuff because we know it's wanted elsewhere, and we do hope to eventually expand once we can and be anywhere and everywhere we can, and hope that other people, take this up and do it too. But right now, we are housed in Redondo Beach.
What a wonderful thing, and what a wonderful platform. And now that you are on this show and have the ability, I'm sure it's going to open doors for you to be able to talk in places that maybe wouldn't have known about autism before. So what a wonderful thing. And also, just like you were able to educate Josh Thomas about an assistance dog, having you on the show with an assistance dog has got to be informing a whole lot of people about what that's like. For anybody who's listening and still doesn't understand what an assistance dog can do for someone like yourself, let's just talk specifically about you, because everybody's sort of different.
Yeah.
But how does Luke help you?
So there are two very specific things he's task trained to do. So one of them is deep pressure therapy. For anyone who doesn't know what that is, it's similar to like when you have a weighted blanket or a weighted vest or a nice hug. So having autism, when you have that sensory overload and you're not quite in your body, everything's painful.
Yeah.
It gives you, if you have pressure on certain pressure points, it just gives you something to focus on and pull you back into your body and able to calm down those sensory reactions.
Is it like a grounding sort of
Yeah.
thing? It grounds you?
So for me, it's he will either lay sitting down on my lap, or if I lay down, what's most helpful to me is on my chest, and he will lay right on my chest and give me that pressure wherever I am.
And is it sort of instantly you feel a little bit less anxiety?
It takes a little time, because it's really about like pulling me back into my body and focusing on that one sensation instead of whatever sensation felt harmful to me. And then the other thing he does is when I reach, so that's preemptive before I reach that sensory overload. The other time is if I really do reach that sensory overload, I lose motor function and just freeze in place, because it activates that fight or flight response. And if there's nothing to fight or flee, because it's a sensory reaction, my body just shuts down and tells me, you're safe here, don't move, don't do anything. And I cannot move, which can sometimes not be safe for me.
Yeah.
So he's trained to grab my arm and pull me toward the nearest exit, or what he perceives to be the safest place, which he usually finds like a cuddly, cozy blanket, he thinks, and at home is his bed.
Wow. So he'll help guide you to his
guide me,
bed, and then the two of you will sit there
Yeah,
and
then
cuddle.
I can recover and get away from whatever was causing me that sensory reaction. Yeah.
And how long have you and Luke been working together?
About 2 years. Yeah.
And is your life better because he's in your life?
He has made a huge difference. Yeah, it's made me feel safer to be able to go places without, a parent or a friend. And I can go places without telling people that I have autism and I need this and I need you to know that if this happens, because he can just take care of it. I can step out and then step back in and just be myself, rather than feeling like I need to be taken care of.
And just knowing that he's with you, is that sort of like a comfort in and of itself?
I mean, it's always nice to have a friend by you every day, right? Someone you can rely
someone
on.
who's as beautiful as he is. I mean, I'm sure he walks in the room and I'm sure he lights up the room. Everybody wants to talk to him.
I mean, he's made socializing easier. People approach me and ask me about him, and then if I approach them and just say something about him, it creates something to start a conversation.
Yeah.
And it's just, oftentimes you walk into the room and it just creates a happier mood for people. He's definitely something on set that people look forward to.
Absolutely.
Having there, yeah.
I can only imagine. But we should say that is what he does for you, and that for other people, their assistance dogs
all
do
do
other
different
things. And some people have a companion dog, which is an entirely different thing, correct?
Yes. So service dogs have legal rights, and they're trained specifically to be able to go everywhere. There's also emotional support animals. That is more of a therapy thing, an emotional thing, and they're not legally allowed everywhere or trained to be everywhere. But if you ask permission, a lot of times people will let you have an emotional support animal everywhere. But again, they are not specifically trained, so they will sometimes bark or run around or do things where you see he has been quiet and just laying in the corner and trying not to be noticed,
Right.
which is what more of a service dog is trained to do.
And I have to say, because it's so hard because the outside world looks at people and we all place judgments on things. And I look at you and I see this incredibly brave young woman, incredibly capable, incredibly wise, and a real advocate for the community, and a real role model. But we all know that somebody can look like everything is going well, and yet it feels differently on the inside, right? I had to explain to somebody yesterday that I'm shy. And they were like, Shannon, you can't possibly be. You talk all the time. I'm like, that has nothing to do with what it feels like on the inside for me. But so just maybe a little bit of insight for the people who are watching. Is this comfortable for you, or is this a little bit of a push for you?
This is comfortable for me because this is a topic I know. This is something I speak about all the time. But if you were to bring me in to talk about something different, I'd probably be more nervous, think I'd say something wrong. Social situations can definitely be hard for me. I have huge executive functioning problems, and I have to work really hard to do it right, because it definitely, being an actress, there's so many things with executive functioning that I had
Give
to...
them a little clue of an example of what that might be that would be hard.
So, for example, your schedule is different every day, and you have to be on that. You have to show up on time, otherwise everything's thrown off, right? So if you have an 8 o'clock call time and you show up at 10 o'clock, they can't film. It's just a problem. So, and you only get the times 24 hours in advance.
Sometimes you're at your hotel and they slide it under the door to tell you what time you're supposed to be there tomorrow.
And then you have every scene is different, and you have a bunch of things to remember. You're blocking your lines, your interactions, while on top of getting it all in sequential order, because we did not film in the order that you see on the screen. So there's a lot of things that you have to do and prepare, and so that was a lot of stuff that I had notebooks planned beforehand, color coding everything, so it was all completely ready. And I did share, I think it was episode 5, the party entrance scene. I had completely the wrong script for that scene. I came in, I was saying different lines, everyone was so confused.
Oh dear.
And it took us a while to figure out that I just hadn't, kept up with my executive functioning and gotten that right. But it was fine. I got the new script and was able to memorize it.
Wow.
Because there are updates frequently on the writing.
They'll rewrite. But now, so do you have to do that all by yourself, or does somebody help you to be able to manage all of that?
So I hired my sister. It doesn't necessarily have to be my sister, but for this show it was my sister who definitely helped me with it. That she drove me to make sure I was on time. She made sure that I did have the lines I needed, and she got me water and made sure there were things, and she made sure he went to the bathroom and all that, because I couldn't do the executive functioning for Luke and me at the same time during that. So she did do that for me.
That's awesome.
And and I hope that I can continue to hire someone to do that stuff for me. But it does cost money. I know she would have probably, as my sister, done it for free, but she was working really hard, and she does need to have her own job.
Well, I think it's notable that anybody who is doing that level of work, especially doing consulting at the same time. So you had multiple jobs going on.
I did have multiple jobs.
They all have assistants. So because that would be hard for anybody, and especially if that's already an area where you have some needs, then I'm so glad you took care of yourself. And said, I got to have some support here. That's really the key. And here's what I see is that even when I was catching up on some of those episodes last night and seeing some of the situations, and my mind was just sort of blown, because we're seeing more and more that studios and directors are saying, I've got a character who's on the autism spectrum. I want to audition actors, and I want to see if there are actors who can do this, right? And they're finding the actors, which is wonderful. We're all excited about that. But there is still some trepidation on the studio's part that we've been hearing about, that but will they be able to handle this kind of a circumstance? And I got to say that you and Kayla are showing them that absolutely that you guys are handling. I was like so excited for you guys last night. Looking at some of those later episodes where you have those kinds of things going on. It wasn't just talking about, there was physical stuff happening. And to hear that you guys were taking care of yourselves, both as women, but also as people who have different sensory needs. I'm really proud of you guys. What an amazing example for all of us.
Oh, it's amazing, and I love that they went with authentic casting from lead to background actor. Anything written in the script, any character with autism was played by someone with autism, and my favorite scene representing that is episode 2, classroom scene. Every single actor in that scene was autistic.
Wonderful.
From all of the classroom.
Well, that right there is a reason enough to support the show and watch it. But I guarantee if you watch it, you're going to find yourself shocked. Get ready. You're going to be shocked every single episode. You're going to get emotional every single episode. You're going to laugh every single episode. Sometimes you're going to be like, I don't think I should be laughing at that. But you're not going to be able to help yourself because Josh throws it out there. And then even, you know, amongst the characters, he'll be like, what? That's not funny? He is, I don't want to say evil genius, let's just say genius, but he's a mastermind at getting us to see things in a different way. So unfortunately we're out of time, but it's been so lovely to have you come here and to meet Luke. And if people want to be watching Everything's Gonna Be Okay tonight at 8:30 on Freeform, go to your local listings, see where it is, go get caught up on the first episodes. Write to me and tell me, but you're going to be shocked. I'm just going to tell you, get ready. It's edgy, but it's brilliant. And I love it. I just love it. And have from minute one. So check that out on Freeform. I'm supposed to tell you who we have on the show, but I don't remember who we have on the show. Oh, we're doing an oldie but a goodie tomorrow of Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. That's why I don't remember. So tune in, and then next week on Monday, I'm just going to tell you, we got a big show. You're not going to want to miss it. Bonnie Yates and Justin Leaf are both going to be here. So really incredible show on Monday, plus a great week next week. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now.